Right, well, hello and welcome to Restart Sailing number show 50. I'm Simon Lovesey of Restart Sailing, joined my colleague John. Amazing, we've got 50, and well, I think it's over 2 years when we started, when the pandemic was
we got to the
off.
big 5-0, and it's been a fantastic summer of sailing. And actually, it's sort of coming to the end now. I see those final few people hitching up their boats to go to the last remaining class championships. And again, we've got a great guest with Christ Atherton, the National Performance Manager of the RYA, and we're going to have a little chat about sailing modes in the coaching section. So lots to forward to.
Before we go into the stats, we obviously started looking at the COVID issues, which was the big one on the agenda, and obviously sailing did stop, but it was good to see that Restart Sailing and working with the clubs, classes, and of course the RYA, we were able to, I suppose, between all of us, come up with means of keeping going. But as we keep saying, the buses keep coming, and it's been fuel crisis, energy crisis. We're going to be looking at sort of other things like water levels. So I think we're still in for turbulent times, and I guess that's what we're all about, is really working together. But I think it's great that the community does work together, and I think we've shown that we're resilient and can get through these things. But it's never ending, is it?
Well, I think that's just life. There's always issues. I mean, I feel very lucky as an Olympic coach that I have a very varied day job. And that's one of the things why the mental aspect of sailing is so important, because there's always so many variables beyond your control. But if we look at the COVID numbers, you can see things are well down. And actually, we're getting excess deaths from things that are not COVID related. So it's really good to have that data there, so we can look back over 50 shows and see how it went. And it's really interesting that you don't miss things at all. They're gone. And I think a lot of people will have realised just how much sailing means to them, how much they missed it when they couldn't do it. And I hope that will reinvigorate the sport.
Yes, and I think it's shown that that the mental aspects of this, and I think obviously the argument was that sport should carry on, shouldn't it? And I think that did get through eventually, I think, didn't it?
Yeah, and I think physical and mental well-being, it's really important. It's funny, when I go and do my club race on a Wednesday evening or whatever, actually that going racing myself, that's sort of a way to relax. It's the one time that my phone is definitely off, and it's an important part of our well-being. And I think probably there'll be a small mental health crisis over a few years for people who really suffered, and those people who did their best to sort of carry on life in this normality, then I think they would have got through as well as it can. And single-handed sailing, in terms of avoiding respiratory disease, I mean, you don't get much better.
But I think some of those studies are starting to happen, and people are starting to look at the consequences of some of the lockdowns and things like that, and perhaps realise.
If you're in a boat and you end up within less than a metre of somebody else in 25 knots, you've got much bigger problems to.
But I think the powers that be are realising the importance of some of these, as you say, the mental health aspects, and hopefully that will change the direction, or they're thinking a bit. Right, so we move on.
So I mean, it's an overused word. It's been an unprecedented Olympic cycle. Next year we have this. I never know how to say it. The World Sailing World Championships, which is all the Olympic classes, and it is the first, biggest and most important Olympic qualifier. World Sailing, I actually attended a town hall meeting yesterday, and it talked about all the different ways of qualification. And we're already halfway to the next Olympic Games, and I fly on Monday next week to get ready for the test event, because everything gets put in place. And I don't think people realise at the elite end just how much good work is done at the background. So just the learning points from the standing penalties and things like that from Tokyo, every Olympic cycle gets better and better, and hopefully the stuff which we do at elite level really filters down into clubs, classes and grassroots sailing, because that's the future of our sport. So the cadets I will see on Saturday, hopefully they will be the people filling the clubhouse in 10, 20, 30 years time.
Yeah, and it's great to see all the classes coming together, the Olympic classes for these events. I think it brings a lot of economies of scales, doesn't it?
Yeah, top tip, you want to be booking your accommodation for August 2023 yesterday, if you want to be walking distance from the venue.
Okay, and I think it's, 800 boats typically, isn't it? I think so.
Yeah, I mean, the number of sailors is in four figures. and the number of support staff, it's a huge event, and it's great. I mean, I'm really looking forward to the tail end of the season. The ILCA class, we've still got our Europeans, so I should say the ILCA 6 class, we've still got our Europeans and World Championships to come. So it's not over. Hopefully, the core quality of this is good, because for once we're all at home.
Yeah. Okay. So back to earth and back to the UK. I think we've obviously had a hot summer, and but that's now causing some issues. That quite a few of the reservoirs are seeing low levels, and perhaps we bring Chris in at this point with the RYA. I think we're showing a picture of Castington there, isn't it? We've got a big event coming up.
Great to have you on, Chris. Can you just give us your title and a tiny bit of background? I mean, crikey, we've known each other for a very, very long time. But
John, we did our original coaching course together.
I remember.
With Alan Olive, yeah.
And it keeps on changing. It was a national coach, and now it's a level 3 or what?
I lose track, and I work with the RYA.
Yes. But it's the same faces driving the sport forward. But for people at home, if you can just give us your title. This is where I always make a mistake.
Well, my current title, which is about to change, I believe, is National Performance Manager. So I'm responsible for running the RYA regional training groups, of which we've got about 25 over this last year, and of course we struggled to run those during the COVID period, and then we've just done a complete cycle, which is a new part of the RYA strategy to go regional. We can come back to that perhaps later on. But
perhaps we talk about water levels first in terms of.
But I'm just sorry to say what I do. But other than that, I am. Clearly, I've sailed all my life. I windsurf, I wing, and I'm a father of 3 sailors who've been through clubs, RYA programs, and are still involved in sailing all together now. So that's a bit about me, John.
And sorry, what was the new title going to be again? Because the regional site is such a good thing, because it's environmentally good, and it keeps the number of hours in the water high in relation to the number of hours in the car, which I think is very important.
Yeah, I mean, so my new title is, as you probably all know, we've got, I think you had Ian Walker on, who's the outgoing race director of racing, and now we've got the new one coming in, Nick Scott, who was a high performance manager some years ago, and he becomes the race manager. I will take on the responsibility for the junior programs, and then we'll have somebody who will be responsible for the youth program. So not that much of a change. Sorry, going back to Simon's question. Fortunately, we're seeing the participants. I think the top are due to be there in roughly 2 weeks' time for one of their national events. And this is the first time we've seen this, because we used to run the regional junior championships in September. Quite often, some of the inland waters, it really can affect, particularly the reservoirs. Queen Mary sometimes has struggles because the water gets low with those, so it is difficult, and we'll just have to wait and see, because I suspect really a lot of it depends on whether the reservoirs replenish. It depends on how much rain, but we are forecast a lot of rain next week.
But I think it's a bit more complex to that, Chris, talking to the clubs. It's not necessarily rain, because I know like Datship, for example, they can drain even if it's dry, even if it's raining, because it's really the choice of the water company, isn't it, in terms of where the water goes. So it's a bit there. But hopefully the rain will replenish it, and there'll be a short-term problem. But I think talking to some of the clubs, it's I think some of the lowest that they've seen for decades, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, undoubtedly, this is the worst drought we've seen for a long time, and each club will have different issues. I think the reservoirs depends on where they're connected into the grid. So I know that some of them can replenish from the Thames and what have you, but a lot of those clubs are in the hands of the water board. Yeah, I
think that's the thing. People say it's raining. Why are we not sailing? So you need to sometimes look at the bigger picture. Right. Okay. Well, as we're talking, Chris, put your slide up.
So I just came back. Well, I say came back. I was sleeping in my own bed for once, which was very nice, from that ILCA skills week. Nearly 100 boats. We had, I think, a coaching team, 10, 11, all doing little groups. So we had something like eight sailors each, and it was just so nice to come back to grassroots. And I said at the top of the show, for me, that's really what the future of the sport is. And I do worry when I go to sailing club, and if I see the sort of average age or whatever, just creeping up a little bit. So I guess one of the big things is getting people in the sport and actually that retention in the sport.
Yeah, I mean, John, this is clearly a problem that we're all working on in the RYA within sports development and within the racing teams. That we're all looking at how we can get people in the sport, retain them in the sport. What are the things that really are critical to retention? And in the racing side, our clear intent is to retain the people in the sport. It's not about Olympic sailing.
But you need that mass participation to gather the people to get the person who comes right to the top.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why we've gone to at the junior level, we've gone to a regional program. We can just see, and part of the things when we were discussing with Ian as a team, the cost of materials are going up, the cost of travel is going up, the cost of accommodation is going up. It's all going, and not only is it the cost of time to the people and the young sailors, we've got to look at how we can support these young sailors within the club structure and keep it locally. That's a model that works in a lot of other countries, and it's clearly one that we subscribe to. And clearly we have got a performance program where people go on to youth sailing and Olympic program. But that's for the minority, so it's about giving them access to other pathways as well. We've all done team racing, or some of us have done team racing, and we hope a lot of them go on to team racing, match racing, and club sailing. And I think the challenge is for all of us working with the clubs, and it's not an easy solution, because if there's an easy solution, we'll just pick it off the shelf and plug it in. But we haven't got that. So I guess a lot of it is, how do we take these young sailors or new people, adults coming to the sport, and give them an experience that's fun, it's engaging, and carrying them on. And I think things like when you do your coaching tips, classically some of those things about making learning really interesting is really important, and from my perspective. So like, you've got your pictures there of people sat on the side of the laser doing what they call yachting, I think you may have called it.
Keelboat sailing. So they don't beast the boat around with their body, they have to steer accurately.
That kind of thing. Make it fun, make it interesting, and they're doing vicarious learning by doing things like that. And I think that's part of the challenge that we've all got, is how we can get the people who are instructors and coaches to think creatively about supporting young or new people coming into the sport, or indeed existing sailors.
I mean, if you looked at the last Olympic cycle in preparation for the 2020 Olympic Games, I did literally have Marit Baumister and Ali Young and Tula Tekkanen blindfolded sailing upwind so they couldn't see, because people tend to get so good when they're physically strong at sailing the boat around the racecourse that you lose some of that kinesthetic, that feel. And it was quite interesting, because a lot of the top girls ended up rafting together because they got so competitive, they just sailed towards the noise of the other boat. But making it fun is so important. And I was doing the skills week, and I was still finishing coaching about 6 o'clock and then rushing off to try and do my own club race, because I just missed it so much. I guess the other hole, which is sort of something for us all to think about, is that, I don't know, 21 to 35 age range, because people just get busy with lots of things in their life. And for the Ilka class, they've actually brought the age of the masters down to 30, which for somebody in their mid-40s, that seems quite young.
Does that make you a grand vet then?
I don't know what I am, but I injured myself before the previous Worlds about 3 months ago, and I'm still being taped together every time before I go sailing, and that definitely didn't happen 20 years ago.
Yes.
But your question there, John, really about those people, I think it's typically 18 through to 30 is a challenge. And again, I think it's not an easy challenge. And I guess for a lot of people, a lot of our sailors will go through, their junior and youth sailing at their club or the classes and what have you. And the challenge is that universities are more expensive, and I would have thought 8 out of 10 people that we have sailing in our club will go to university. And so I think part of the challenge is there with universities.
I think the team racing fills a really nice hole and is a really good skill set.
Yeah, but it's got limitations, John, hasn't it? If you look at the size of somewhere like University of Southampton, just as an example, or Bristol, they may have 3 or 4 coaching teams. Well, that's not a lot of sailors in the grand scheme of things, is it? Of that kind of age range we're talking about, because the better sailors will get in. So I think the universities have to think creatively, and ideally, the clubs working with the universities. I think, roughly speaking, 1 in 3 people who go to a university quite often live in that region thereafter. So making it being accessible to them is a good way for a club to go. So, for example, clubs around Portsmouth, for example, clubs around Southampton may be able to offer packages that engage things. I think people like the Royal Southern have done things around keel boating and stuff like that. I think the clubs are actually doing things like that, not just the team racing, because the team racing is actually fairly successful, but it's limited in what it can do. So it's how can the clubs retain those people as an idea, thinking of the top of my head. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Well, I actually chose my entire future career on the basis of the sailing club social, because when I rocked up at Loughborough, I found the training dates and competition dates for the canoe club and the sailing club were exactly the same, and I made my decision on which social I enjoyed the most. And I think that social aspect is really important, because sailing is it's a sport for life, and we have a huge number of I don't know what you're allowed to say now, but OAPs who race on the Wednesday evening when they've retired, and you can sail keel boats forever. But just getting the clubs to realise that the young people are the future sport and make it easier for people to participate when it is that sort of whatever it is, 18 to 30.
But I think I've seen that with my sons. I guess probably your sons are slightly younger, aren't they, Chris? But they're in their sort of mid-late 20s, and just life is so expensive. James, the older one's in London. He's on a good job, but his cost of living just absorbs most of his income.
Do you think a pay-to-play model would work well for better?
Well, I think so, yes. I think you can't own a boat in London. That's the first problem, because you can't even own a car. So I think being able to rock up and pay a modest sum is probably the thing. I guess in London, you have to get out to Queen Mary and the like, which again is hard, if you haven't got a car. So there's issues there. But perhaps Chris may have some experience with that. Pay and play may be the one.
I mean, there's several things really, isn't it? Because I think keel boating is one that I did when I was first at university and when I went out. I think accessing the keel boats either through networking through people or clubs offering opportunities, like some of the bigger clubs in the south certainly do that, where you can get involved with the J70 scene or different things. I think
crew lists and things like that.
I think clearly in London it's difficult, but also I think I think there's other avenues as well and that are emerging, which are quite interesting. Though, two of my 3 sons also wing.
Yes.
So they're all winging, and the great thing is that all just goes in the back of a car.
Or on a train even.
And you can literally walk on ferries and stuff like that. So there are other avenues that are
foiling has got to be the future. Now that cat is out the bag, that is not going back. And if you look at some of the emerging nations in the Olympic classes, the IQ foil and the kite surfing, it's so easy for participation, because if you live on a small island nation, you can put your kit on a plane and travel, as opposed to putting traditional boats in containers and shipping them all around the world.
And the other thing about winging, is you can do that inland quite easily. I'm now seeing when I go to Carsington, clearly when they have more water, because you need that for a foil to get going. But I'm seeing when I go to Farnborough or in Oxford, when I go to Datchet, I'm seeing people getting out on the wings and as an alternative. And maybe if you're in London, you can get that in your flat. I don't know.
Well,
I'm under pressure from the girls to finish the day job, to finish the training in time, so they still have enough daylight to go winging at the end.
So I'm not suggesting that's a solution, but it is a portable thing, and it's keeping people in the water, keeping people in the sport. And we're now seeing clubs toying with the idea of racing and winging as well. So that kind of whole foiling thing is another interesting area, and is quite cost-wise is relatively accessible compared to some of the other things. So
I think we're all sailors. However, we get on the water and using wind to get about. You know, there used to be this sort of competition between windsurfers and sailors, or now between kite surfers and sailors. But I see we're all part of the same family, and a lot of the kite surfers, etc., they will have come through your traditional optimist 29er, whatever.
Yeah, most of the top kiters have come from a dinghy racing background, and that's it. Yeah. And so, as you say, they're not. You know, it's all different forms of the sport. It's all about getting out in the water, retaining that. And most of those people who wing or foil, whatever, also do dinghy sail or do other things as well.
Yeah. And I think we're seeing the clubs to be more flexible, aren't they, Chris, in terms of that, allowing different disciplines and crafting, aren't they? Right.
So, perfect. Well, thanks very much. We got through a lot there.
Yeah.
I need to refocus on my coaching. But I just think all the stuff we're chatting about now was true 5 years ago to an extent, and will be true in 5 years' time. You know, it's the nature of the beast.
Good to share. Right.
And we have to look more at regional solutions for sailors. The sustainability, the cost of travel.
Yeah.
And support your home club.
Yeah.
Supporting your club, and where the clubs can help support sailors, who may not have financially resources, whatever, by providing opportunities that will be critical too.
Good. Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Chris. We'll keep you on the call, but we're just going to change slides a bit, so to chip in. Right. Okay.
So yeah, this was what I was talking about last week with the skills, because we're always talking about VMG. Velocity made good, getting around the sailing course as quick as we can, and one of the things is the mental focus to try and get people to sail when possible as if they're doing a time trial, because if you're trying to get around the course as fast as you can, you're much more likely to end up at the front of the fleet as opposed to looking behind you and trying to defend your position and worrying about other boats too much. And that's sometimes the difference between, the people who are standing on the podium and the people who made the top 10. So I always sort of say, if you're looking forward, you're likely to progress forward in the fleet, and if you're looking backwards, well, maybe you're going to end up going backwards. And it's this mental side of things. But the thing about boat speed makes you a tactical genius, and you need to have the tools in the toolbox. And we talked a little bit about sailing modes. So this is the idea that you can maintain maximum VMG. I've got a little picture here showing pinching, in other words sailing high, or footing, in other words sailing low, and you have a big difference in angle, but still progressing towards the upwind mark at the same rate. I just put one little photo on here, but actually it's exactly true. Downwind, you can have heating the boat up and sailing high and fast, or you could have a soaking mode. And it's this idea of having the tools in the toolbox, so when you need to sail high for tactical or strategic reasons, that you get used to doing it, or when you need to sail low, you could also do that. And the difference in boats will be huge. In a Ilka, you can bear away a little bit upwind in the upper wind range, and you'll go a little bit faster, but there's a diminishing return. If you're in a boat like a 470, you may have a very large difference in angles between the two modes if you're able to plane when you do a very low mode. So it's really important when you train to look at improving your weaknesses, not just polishing the front side of the trophy, the bit that you like, because it's always easy to practice what you like and what you're good at. So if you're a strong wind sailor, you always want to race and train in 15 knots. If you're perhaps new to a class, you might struggle in the upper wind range if your boat handling skills or your weight are a bit low for that class. So not to always sail the way that you have done previously, and just try these sailing modes. And this is a really good thing we did with the young sailors, but it's something that we do a lot with the Olympic sailors, because it allows you to position yourself on the race course how you want, and that's it. That's
Well, just a word about VMG, John. We've obviously done a lot of tracking of events over the summer, and it's clear that the top sailors really have the best VMG, and
it makes you a tactical genius.
It does, and it's if you look at it, the numbers clearly say the best round of course is gonna get you there, and
Well, elite level, we're not only just using the tracking, but we're having GoPros and things on the boat. We're tracking and also filming just with a flagship phone is absolutely fine. And then when you look at the timestamps, you can see when people were going fast or when they weren't. You can pick up.
And it's interesting. I've seen people who've gone through those videos, gone through the tracking, and they've improved. That those who do put the time in to look at the evidence, and it's there now, isn't it? Easily available.
It's how I can coach when I'm sat here in Weymouth and my potentially Olympic sailor is doing the Romanian nationals.
Yes, or coach yourself, John, isn't it?
Yes.
So that's one of yours. But I think it's exciting that this technology is easily available, and those who make use of it do see some big gains. Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I think
brilliant. Show number 50.
50, yes.
Thank you very much.
Well done, and we'll be back soon.